She helped her best friend for years, but not out of love, out of pride, until one humiliation pushed her into a decision she can never undo. This is not a story about enemies. This is a story about something far more dangerous. A friend who loved you just enough to keep you beneath her. Stay with me, because by the time this story is over, you are going to have a lot to say. And trust me, she is going to need to hear it. Two girls, one dream, different destinies. If you went to a Nigerian university in the early 2000s, you know that certain friendships were forged in fire. The kind of friendships built on 2-minute noodles shared in a tiny hostel room, on staying up all night to read for exams, under one torchlight because NEPA had done what NEPA does best. The kind of friendships where you know each other's secrets, fears, dreams. The kind where you look at each other and say, no matter what, we go do this life together. That was Yinka and Deborah. They met in their first year at university. Two girls from Lagos thrown into the same faculty, the same hostel corridor, the same chaotic, beautiful madness of campus life. From the very first week, they were inseparable. If you saw Yinka, Deborah was somewhere nearby. If Deborah was crying over a boy, Yinka was the one holding her. They borrowed each other's clothes, finished each other's sentences, prayed for each other's futures. People called them sisters. And honestly, they were. 4 years flew by too fast. They graduated, they made it, and they stepped into the real world hand in hand, full of hope, full of faith, full of expectations. Life, however, had very different plans for each of them. Within 2 years of graduating, both Yinka and Deborah found love, but the men they found were not cut from the same cloth. Deborah met Patrick. Patrick was what Nigerians call a correct guy. Older, established, the kind of man who walks into a room and everyone straightens up. He had money, not the kind you show off on Instagram, but the kind that pays for things without flinching, the kind that builds houses, not rents them. He saw Deborah, he wanted Deborah, and within a year, Deborah became Mrs. Okonkwo. Her life changed overnight. Suddenly, Deborah was living in a duplex in Lekki. She had a wardrobe that looked like a boutique. She had a car that most people in Nigeria will never sit inside in their lifetime. Patrick gave her everything. Whatever she pointed at, it was hers. She lacked absolutely nothing. Not material anyway. We'll come back to that. Yinka, on the other hand, met Tunde. Now, Tunde was not a bad man. Let that be very clear. Tunde was kind. Tunde was hardworking. Tunde loved Yinka with everything he had. But Tunde was struggling. He was grinding, trying to find his footing in a country that seems to make no more way for poor people. They got married and moved into a 2-bedroom flat in Bariga. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl. And every single month, they faced the same battle that millions of Nigerian families face. How do you stretch what little you have to cover everything that life demands? School fees, house rent, feeding, light bill, water bill, medical, transport, the list never ends in this country. Never. While Deborah was being wined and dined, Yinka and Tunde were counting coins. While Deborah was flying to Dubai for weekend trips, Yinka was wondering how to tell her landlord that the rent would be late again this month. The gap between the two friends was not just financial. It was becoming a gulf. And yet, they remained close. They still called each other. They still met up. They still laughed together. Because at the core of it, they were still Yinka and Deborah. Still the 2 girls from that hostel corridor who had promised each other forever. But something was shifting beneath the surface. Something that Yinka would not fully understand until it was almost too late. When you are struggling in Nigeria and you have a wealthy friend, you already know how complicated that relationship can become. Pride is a luxury that poverty cannot always afford. And Yinka, for all her strength, for all her prayers, for all her hustle alongside her husband, sometimes reached a wall she simply could not climb alone. So she went to Deborah. And Deborah helped. every single time Deborah helped. From house rent to children's school fees, Deborah contributed. When the family was going through a particularly brutal month and the food in the house had run dangerously low, Deborah would send food items, sometimes money, sometimes both. On the surface, this looked like friendship. Beautiful, loyal, God-sent friendship. But something was not right, and Yinka felt it in her bones, in her spirit, even before she could name it. It started small. After helping with the rent one year, Deborah casually mentioned it at their friend group hangout. Not dramatically, just slipped it in. Yinka, don't worry, you'll settle me when things get better. I know rent was tight this month. Said with a smile, said lightly, but said publicly. And everyone at that table now knew Deborah had paid Yinka's rent. Yinka smiled, let it go. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe Deborah didn't realize. But it happened again and again. Each time Deborah helped, and she helped often, she found a way to let the world know that she helped. The school fees announcement came at a birthday lunch. These children are lucky to have Auntie Deborah, or their school fees is not beans. Laughter around the table. Yinka's smile froze on her face. And then there were the clothes. Deborah had so many clothes that her wardrobe was practically a warehouse. She would regularly pass some to Yinka, and truly some of those pieces were beautiful, quality items that Yinka could never have afforded on her own. She was grateful, genuinely grateful. But the moment Yinka wore any of those outfits when they were out with friends, Deborah's mouth would open. Wait, is that green dress I gave you? It looks better on you than it ever did on me. Innocent, almost sweet, but what it did every single time was remind everyone present that Yinka was wearing her friend's cast-offs. Yinka would smile, laugh it off, go home and sit in the quiet of her bedroom and feel something shrinking inside her. Her confidence, her sense of self, her dignity. She started to dread the hangouts, started to feel self-conscious before she even arrived. What will Deborah say today? What will she reveal this time? Which part of my struggle will she put on display like an exhibit? Yinka would ask herself. And yet, this is the cruelest part. Yinka could not afford to pull away. Because Deborah was not just her friend, Deborah had become her lifeline, her survival system, and Deborah seemed to know this. Because whenever Yinka tried to create distance, tried to protect herself, Deborah would show up, unannounced, with an offer. Groceries, money, school supplies for the children, something that Yinka's family needed so desperately that refusing it felt like a betrayal of her own children. So she would take it, and the cycle would continue. Help given, dignity taken, smile plastered on, tears swallowed. This is what people don't talk about enough. There is a kind of help that is designed to keep you helpless. There is a kind of generosity that is really about control. And Deborah, whether she fully understood it or not, had mastered this art. Now, the moment everything broke. Deborah turned a significant age, the details don't matter, and she decided to throw herself a party. Not a small gathering, a full event. Decorations, caterers, a live band, all of it. The guest list was mostly her husband's circle, wealthy, polished, the kind of crowd that makes you feel underdressed just by existing near them. And of course, Yinka was invited. Yinka went. She wore one of the outfits Deborah had given her because truthfully it was the nicest thing in her wardrobe and she wanted to look presentable among these people. She showed up with a genuine smile, happy for her friend, happy to celebrate her. But something was wrong that day. Maybe it was the performance of the party, maybe it was the crowd watching, maybe it was something uglier that had always lived inside her and had simply outgrown its cage. Whatever it was, Deborah started introducing Yinka to her guests as the maid. Not once, multiple times. Different guests, same line. Oh, anything you need, just ask her. She's my maid house. She knows where everything is. Laughter. The guests laughed. Some looked at Yinka curiously. Some didn't look at her at all after that. Because why would you pay attention to the help? Yinka smiled, laughed, fetched things when people asked. Because what else could she do? Deborah had just helped with her rent. She had to swallow this. She got home that night after putting her children to bed, and she sat in her bathroom and cried in silence. The kind of crying you do when you cannot afford to let anyone hear you. And in that bathroom, in that silence, Yinka made a decision. Here is what Yinka had never told anyone. Patrick, Deborah's husband, the man who gave her friend everything, had been watching Yinka for years. He was never home, always traveling, always on some business trip in Abuja or London or wherever money took him. But in the brief windows when their paths crossed at Deborah's house or at events, Patrick had made his interest in Yinka very clear. Not loudly, not crudely, but clearly. A lingering look, a message on her phone that went just slightly past polite, an offer. Let me know if you ever need anything, just between us. Yinka had shut it down every single time. She had told herself, whatever my situation, I cannot do this to my friend. I cannot do this to my husband. I cannot do this to myself. Some lines, she had decided, were sacred.
But that night, after the birthday party, after being introduced as a maid in front of strangers, after 5 years of swallowed humiliation, the sacred line moved. She picked up her phone. She replied to Patrick. 5 months. For 5 months, Yinka has been in a secret arrangement with Patrick. He takes care of her family financially, school fees, rent, feeding, everything, and she has not needed to ask Deborah for a single thing. The change was noticeable almost immediately. When she stopped showing up with her hand out, Deborah's entire attitude shifted. Suddenly, Deborah was talking to her like an equal again, including her in conversations instead of using her as a prop, calling her my best friend with genuine warmth instead of the possessive, condescending warmth of someone talking about a pet. And Yinka starts with the irony of it. The moment she stopped needing Deborah, Deborah started treating her well, which meant the good treatment was never about love, it was always about leverage. But the irony did not make Yinka feel better, because the guilt is enormous. Every time Tunde looks at her with those trusting eyes, every time her husband, her hard-working, struggling, innocent husband, talks about how grateful he is that things seem to be looking up lately, that maybe God is finally answering their prayers, she feels the weight of what she's doing settle deeper into her chest. Tunde is not a bad man. He is a good man who has not yet found his breakthrough. He does not deserve this. And Deborah, yes, Deborah hurt her. Yes, Deborah humiliated her. But does that justify this? Is this revenge or survival? Is there even a difference anymore? Yinka is confused. She's trapped between what she did to survive and what it is costing her to keep surviving. She came forward because she needs an outside perspective. She needs people who don't know her, who don't have a stake in her story, to tell her the truth. So here it is, the full picture. A woman who was humiliated by the friend she trusted most, a woman who crossed a line she swore was uncrossable, a woman who is now keeping a secret that is quietly eating her alive and carrying 2 different guilts on 2 separate shoulders. What would you tell Yinka to do? Does she come clean to her husband? Does she end things with Emeka and find another way? Does Deborah hurt her, or does Deborah deserve never to know? Does Yinka deserve judgment, or does she deserve grace? Where does accountability end and compassion begin? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Be honest, but be human. Yinka is reading every single one. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you of someone you know or something you lived through, please subscribe. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And come back, because we tell the kind of stories here that people are usually too afraid to say out loud. Until next time, stay wise, stay kind, and remember, not every helping hand is reaching for you. Some are reaching over you. Take care of yourselves.